Good morning or afternoon and welcome to PD. I want to apologize if you hear any noises in the background because I am at home. Today's agenda are types, scoring, and purposes of assessments. Our targets are understanding the types and purposes of assessments and considering scoring in an SRG system. Here is the CHAMP's expectations. There will be certain pause breaks during the presentation, but if you need to pause, you can do so at any time. Please make sure that you ask questions during those pause breaks where everybody on your team is paused and having a discussion. That way they can hear the answer and the question as well. So what do we mean when we talk about assessments? Dr. Marzano offers this definition and has these resources available. On your table, there is a folder that has some packets of paper clipped together. One paper clip packet is for one person. So please pass those out now. It has this note-taking device on top. Today we're going to talk about three types of assessments: obtrusive, unobtrusive, and student-generated. These are the terms that the district has in using, so we are going to make sure we define these. Obtrusive assessments are ones where you stop instruction to give an assessment. So you're stopping your flow of your normal day or not having instruction for a certain amount of time to give the students the assessment. It can be in many different ways: paper pencil, a demonstration or presentation, a performance, an oral assessment. Those are just a few examples, but go ahead and read this example that is given to you. The questions on an assessment, this kind of assessment, are usually selected response items and or constructed response items. So go ahead and get out your teacher's guide to standards-based learning and turn to page 73. Number off in your grade level group from 1 to 3, and then you're going to read your section on page 73, either true, false, matching, or multiple choice. And then you're going to share a summary of your section to your group once everybody is done. So go ahead and pause right now and take about 2 or 3 minutes to read and share a summary of your section. So these types of questions only require students to recognize a correct answer. So I want you to turn and talk to your partner next to you. What level of content will selected response items typically assess and why? So level 2, 3, or 4. So go ahead and pause for about 2 minutes and answer this question with your group. So the opposite, a constructed response item, the students have to construct a correct answer. Go ahead and go back to page 73, and you're going to read the two sections under constructed response items, fill in the blank, and short answer, and extended response. So go ahead and pause and read those two sections to yourself about 1 minute. Read one or two examples on this slide of constructed response items. Now I want you to turn and talk again with your partner. What level will short constructed response items typically assess? Briefly justify your answer to your partner. Take about 2 minutes and pause and do this right now. So let's move on to unobtrusive assessments. So unobtrusive assessments are one that do not interrupt the flow of your instruction. Students might not even know that you are assessing them, and they are more easily applied because to the content that involves learning a skill, a strategy, or a process. So go ahead and turn to page 78 in your book. There are 7 different types of unobtrusive assessment examples. I am going to do number 7 as a model, but you're going to number off 1 to 6 and then explain your assessment to the group and follow it up with the statement And in blank, this could look like blank. So for think, pair, share, when a teacher gives a question and has some think time, students pair and share. So in ELA, this could look like the teacher walking around listening to those answers of the question that the teacher have asked from the text or vocabulary or different things like that. So go ahead and pause for 2 or 3 minutes. On the Standards Reference Grading website, the district has offered some examples of unobtrusive assessments in different areas. These are printed behind your note-taking device, so go ahead and pause this video and take about 1 minute just to glance at these documents. We are going to probably use them next week or look at them a little bit deeper later. So the next one is student-generated assessments, and this is the most unutilized form of assessment. So students are the one that generates the ideas and how they want to demonstrate their current level on a given topic or their understanding. He or she is the one that comes to you and asks you, but you as the teacher have to express to the student when you feel it's appropriate for them to demonstrate their knowledge. Go ahead and turn to page 80 in your book. There is a figure 4.2 that shows menu choice boards. So you're going to look at the example in the book and think about this question. To create a menu board, what are the things that you would need in place in order for this to be successful? So go ahead and pause this right now for about 2 minutes and just read and discuss this as a group. So some of the things you might have said were on target items, having a creative or interest to students, and aligning your questions or tasks to the scale. So just to recap, the students are the ones that are going to ask you to show their knowledge, and they can be done in ELA, math, or any other subject. So the next activity, you are going to get the last page in your packet. In your group, you're going to read each of the type of assessment scenario and decide whether it's the unobtrusive, obtrusive, or student-generated assessment, and circle your answer. And we will check in about 2 minutes. So go ahead and pause and complete that sheet. So here are the answers. Number 1 is student-generated. Number 2 and 3 are both obtrusive. And number 4 and 5 are both unobtrusive. Okay, next we're going to talk about scoring assessments. So we know that those selected response ones have a right or wrong answer, but you might not know how you want to score a constructed response item. So here are 2 possible options. Option 1 just has correct, incorrect, or partially correct, and option 2 has correct, incorrect, low partial credit, high partial credit. So we're going to use these codes on the next couple slides to decide what the grade will be. So look at this student and think about the coding we had on the last page. So if the student did this assessment and the teacher has graded it, what would you give for their value? How would you score this student? Go ahead and turn and talk about 1 minute with your partner. So there are times when we have unexpected answers to questions, and this is where it can get tricky. So if you look at this student, they got all of the 3.0 correct or high partially correct, which would give them a score of 2.5. However, you notice that they missed 2 of the 2.0 items on this assessment. So this pattern is referred to as an aberrant or unexpected pattern of responses. So thinking about why these patterns could occur, this is not an exhaustive list, but here are some reasons that it might occur. the items written for a particular score were flawed in some way. Maybe they really weren't that level. Students maybe didn't put the effort into some items that they put into others. And maybe the teacher's evaluation of a student's response might have been inaccurate. So what can you do as the teacher? So you can do many things. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but just a couple of examples. You could ignore those items that appear to be aberrant. You can meet with the individual student who displays such patterns and ask them to fix those issues or reconcile those issues. You might realize that you need to reclassify items to a higher or lower scale value based on the responses of the entire class. So turn and talk to your partner. Discuss these and other possible reasons you might see an unexpected pattern of responses and how might you address them in your classroom. So go ahead and pause for about 2 minutes and answer that question with your partner. The last thing we're going to talk about is the purpose of assessments. So we're talking about formative and summative assessments. And you can go ahead and read this little quote. It's the timing of the interpretation and the purpose in which the information is used that determines whether it's formative or summative. So this is an example of Laura. Let's say that we gave her the scores on generating narratives throughout the year, and you can see in August she would be at she was at a 1.5, and by February a 3.5. So if we average those out, it would be 2.25. But a 2.25 is obviously not where she's at right now and a good indicator of her knowledge on this scale. So she actually was at a 3.5 in February, and her score should reflect as that, not an average score. So in determining summative grades, teachers should examine the student's performance on these assignments and assessments. So giving that body of evidence, we're using that to decide. Maybe you are going to give more weight to recent information. Limit the use of those zeros. Know the limitations of averaging, like we just showed as the example. And separate what students know from how they behave. This information can be found in your teacher's guide on page 86. Again, you will have more training in the future on standards reference grading and having an opportunity to what grading will look like and maybe some feedback to your students. So thank you for the time of the presentation today, and go ahead and move on to task 2.